Hello everyone, this is Stacy Ellis. Welcome to my channel. I am a registered dietitian and currently a PhD candidate at Texas Women's University. And I'm currently in a series talking about the PhD program, the PhD process. So if you are someone who is interested in getting a PhD, if you're unsure if that's something that you should do and you are worried about different aspects of it, then this is the series for you. I've already done 2 videos on it and I plan on doing a few more here. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, all those good things that you're supposed to do on all these YouTube videos. And stay tuned, I will have more videos up for you. I just finished doing a video on the things I wish I knew before entering into the PhD program. And those things were just things generally about the PhD program as a whole. Now I'm going to talk about those things that I wish I knew for each individual part along the process. So if you're kind of confused on what I mean about each individual part along the process, make sure you look at my first video in the series where I talk about what to expect in the PhD process. I pretty much go through step by step what you will go through while you're working on your PhD. So today I'm going to talk about each one of those steps, what I wish I knew, and not everything here is something that I particularly wished, but it's stuff that I may have realized or learned along the way while I was working on my master's degree. And obviously with my PhD. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, the first step in your program will be your coursework. And so I pretty much got a good idea of the class load that I could handle during my master's degree. So I'm going to refer to that in terms of, what you should expect. So for myself, when I was doing my master's degree, we were required to take 3 classes during the time that we were dietetic interns. So the way that our internship worked, the first year we were taking master level courses. You had to take at least 3 classes per semester. And then you had your internship and then you could finish your degree. Okay. So during those first 2 semesters, I had to take 3 classes and I was working. I had to work because, for one thing, I had already took out student loans for me to go back to school and I didn't want to take out any more loans, and so I wanted to work to pay my way through school. In addition, when you're doing your dietetic internship, it's impossible for you to work. It's hard to do that. And so I wanted to save up some money so that way, I would be set for that year that I was doing my internship. Well, as you can imagine, I was working like 30 to 35 hours a week, and I was taking 3 master level classes. In our particular program, you're required to make an A or a B in all of your classes. I ended up making a lot of B's those 2 semesters, and I was not happy about that. And you might be someone that's like, oh, B's, that's great, that's fine. But I actually graduated the top of my class when I was getting my post-bac in nutrition and dietetics. And so I always had A's in all of my classes. So for me, going from making all A's, getting into grad school, and now I'm making B's, that was unacceptable for me. And so I learned real quick that I could not take 3 classes and work at the same time. Now I knew I needed to work. And so once I was done with my internship, I still tried to work, but instead of taking 3 classes, I took 2 classes at a time. Sometimes I might have took like a 1 credit hour here or there that might make it 3, but I did not take 9 hours, 9 or 10 hours. I did not do that anymore after my first year. And it really did make a difference in terms of my grades. I made A's. I currently have a 3.9 GPA. I only made, I think, 1 B in my PhD program. And I'm actually kind of upset about that B, but I'm not going to talk about that. So that's something that I learned for myself. Now, not everyone is like me. I know how much time that I need to get my schooling done. And it's not just because I'm slow with, studying or anything like that, but it's also because I have other obligations. It's very important for me to work so that way I don't have to pay for student loans. It is also important for me to be a good wife. So one of the things, my husband was very loving and very supportive of me going back to school. And last thing I wanted to do was be in school and just be selfish. And so, I still try to be a good wife. And, some people might call me traditional, and that's fine. But I do care about making sure my house is clean. I care about making sure I have a warm meal ready for my husband, helping him, making him lunch and, doing laundry, all those types of things. That's important to me. And so I felt it was more important for me to take fewer classes so that way I can still be a good wife to my husband. If I had children, it would be the same situation. I would do, my first priority is in the home. That's my philosophy. I know not everyone has that same philosophy, but that is my philosophy. My priority is in the home. And so if I can't take care of the home, if I can't take care of my husband and, all of that, then I have no business being in school. And so that's in part why I decided to cut back. And in addition, I commute. I commute an hour to get to school. And so that's an additional 2 to 4 hours, depending on traffic, that really does add to your day and adds to your stress load. And so, you pick and choose where you're going to have your stress. And so for me, I learned real quick after that first school year of me being in grad school that I can only take about 6 credit hours, maybe 7 at a time. And, that's something that you'll need to decide for yourself. If you care about your grades, if you, care that you make all A's or not, then you do those things that you need to do. But there's some people that they can still make A's and they can work and they can have children and they can do all that. But everyone's different. Everyone is different. So you know what you can handle. Maybe it would have been easier if I lived in the same town as the school, and I would have loved that. But my husband is our main provider, and so we live close to his job. He's a coach. He has to wake up early. They have games where they come home late, and I just don't feel safe with him driving 2 o'clock in the morning home, if we lived an hour away. I'd rather be closer to his job, and then I commute to school, being that I don't necessarily have to go every day, and it's during the day when I do go. So, but that's our decision that we decided to do. So that's the one thing about coursework. I will say too, obviously, be aware of the types of classes that you're going to be taking and try to plan your schedule accordingly so that way you're not taking too many really difficult classes at one time. There was one semester, it was actually my first semester in the PhD program. I signed up for micronutrients, and then I was in a doctoral level chemistry class. And I learned real quick that I couldn't do it. There was no way for me to do both classes at once. And so I dropped that chemistry class. And so you know yourself, you know what you can handle. You're not a failure for dropping a class. So just do what you can, and, just keep on striving towards your goals. The next thing that I would say is we have the Qualifiers Exam. Now, it might not be called a Qualifiers Exam in every department. They might call it, something else, but that's what we called it, is the Qualifiers Exam. I would just say be prepared for the exam. Just be prepared. For me, out of everything in my dissertation, in my PhD process, the Qualifiers Exam was the hardest part for me. Granted, I'm working on my dissertation and it's taking a long time. You would think that that's the hardest part. No, the Qualifiers Exam was the hardest part for me. So definitely take time to study, But at the same time, don't like wait it out. Like, go ahead and take it. Like, don't try to push it off thinking that, well, I'm gonna just do this later. You know, when you are able to apply, go ahead and apply, because if you do fail, which people do fail the qualifiers exam. I got so close to failing. Like, you needed, for my written portion, you needed to make an 80. Remember, A's or B's, right? I had an 80 on my written portion. So if I had 1 point less, I would have had to redo everything the next semester. And there were many, I had classmates that had to redo it. It wasn't that they weren't smart. It's just, it's very difficult. It was the hardest part of the program. For me, it was the hardest part. Now, there's some people it wasn't as hard. And I think part of that might be how your qualifier exam is and who you are as a person. For me, it was challenging. It was, if I was honest about it. So just be prepared for that. Try to, remember all those things from your classes that you took previously, and, just do the best that you can. The next thing that I would point out is planning your committee. When you plan your committee, you want to be strategic. Don't just pick any old person to be on your committee because you need 5 people on your committee. You need to be strategic. I was strategic with my committee. I picked people who I knew would help me in terms of, being a good mentor regarding the subject areas that I'm interested in. So sports nutrition, very much interested in, right? I'm doing dance nutrition. So the dancer arena includes women's health, includes eating disorders. So I had someone on my committee regarding that. I'm doing sports and exercise. I have a kinesis minor, so I had to pick someone who I felt was the most matching of my study and my needs from the kinesis department as well. So you definitely want to think about those things. But in addition to that, you also want to speak to other grad students about the different faculty in terms of how is it working with them? What is it like working with them? And you'll find that there's some individuals that will make it hard for you to graduate. Like, they'll purposely make it more difficult for you to get done. And you might find some people who they're just no help at all. They might not even know how to use the research techniques, or they have nothing to contribute. And so you do want to be mindful about your committee. And you also want to be mindful about the politics, right? So sometimes there might be some faculty member that don't get along with other faculty member. And so for them to be on the same committee, you don't want them to be arguing. You don't want them to have like a bad dynamic. And so keep that in mind as well. Granted, they should be professional, but that's not always the case, unfortunately. So do keep that in mind when you are picking your committee, okay? Be strategic. With that, you move on to your dissertation process. I have stated these things in my other videos, but you definitely want to try to gain experience where you can, not just with your dissertation, but if there's other research projects that you can get involved in, definitely do that. But in regards to your dissertation, you definitely want to try to plan ahead. You will get things that come your way that you're not anticipating. And so you want to try to prevent as much of stuff that you can prevent in the future. For me, I knew that I was going to work with humans. And so I knew I needed to take time to work on my IRB and got the IRB down. And that process for me, it's an extra step. It can take more time. So be prepared for that. Also be prepared for if you're going to need funding. If you're working with human participants, you will need funding. And I was not prepared for that because for my master's degree, I worked on humans, but I did not give them any incentive. They were happy to just be in my study. They were happy to learn about nutrition. And so I didn't give them anything. And I was very lucky for people to join my study for that. But really, when you're working with humans, you want to have some type of incentive. And so you do want to, look up grants and keep that in mind when you're planning your dissertation. So for me, I actually had a hard time finding grants because most grants that are out there deal with chronic diseases. They deal with special areas that are very popular. In my area, dance nutrition is not very popular. And so do keep that in mind when you're planning out your study. You're going to be competing for different grants. And so you're going to want a study that will be competitive, that you'll be able to get a grant. So keep that in mind. Also, in terms of your dissertation, if you are working with humans and if you're working with a research team, you need to be a good manager of bodies. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure you have people on your team that you know are reliable. You want people on your team that you know if you ask them to be somewhere that they'll be there and they won't forget to be there. They'll put it on their calendar. They'll remember that it's on their calendar. So you definitely want to learn how to be a good manager in that aspect. I've had cases, and this is not to knock any of my classmates, but I've had cases where I had people who said that they would be willing to be on my research team, and then when I would ask them to do things, it was like it was an inconvenience for them, or they never were available, and that's fine. I mean, if it's not something that they're interested in, I'm not interested in all the different research projects that are on my campus. I'm not interested in all the research projects in my department. So that's understandable. And maybe, sometimes people might feel obligated to say yes to you because they're your friend or, whatever the case may be. But just look for those warning signs if you can tell that somebody's not really that interested in helping you. And try to find people who are motivated, who are interested in helping. And with that, give them an incentive of the fact that they're going to be on your publications, on your research study, and that will help their CV. But some people, even if you have that, they might not care. So keep that in mind. And with that too, you want to make sure you juggle your research with all the other research and other classes that are going on. So for me, my research study was happening at the same time that there were other research studies using the same facility that I was using. And I also was using a room that was used for classes. And so I had to take it upon myself to coordinate with all these different entities. So that way, I was not messing with anyone's schedule. You want to have a good rapport with other faculty. You want to have a good rapport with other researchers in the field. So, think about those things too. You don't want to be last minute and have people rushing to try to get stuff done, and then you look unprofessional and people don't know what's going on. You don't communicate with other people in other departments, or if you're using a certain facility or all of that. So make sure you are organized with the people that you are using. The other thing is that I would say is make sure that you are staying on top of your writing. Have a certain time where you are writing, because if not, it'll be so easy that you will lose track of time, and before you know it, you have nothing written. So what has helped me was actually having a designated time each day where I would write. I write my best first thing in the morning, and so I would have a certain time in the morning where I would write my information. Find what's best for you. Find a routine that you can stick with. Now, sometimes you might have to stop. Like, for instance, when we were doing our firefighter study, I had to be at the school 8 o'clock in the morning. So during that time, I knew I was not going to get my writing done. And so during that block of time, I realized, okay, I can't work on my dissertation writing here. I can't work on my publication writing here. So plan in advance. figure out when you'll have time to do those things and plan it out. Because if you don't plan it, and if you don't see it as a scheduled event, there will be other things that will come and you won't get your stuff done. So definitely schedule it as though it's a class. Start your writing early if you're able to, even before you do your dissertation. We were talking about publications, so it's a really good habit to just get into, to try to create a schedule of when you're going to be writing throughout the week or throughout the day if you have the opportunity to write every single day. And with that being said, stay on top of your faculty members that are reading your papers, because they stay busy and they can forget. They might forget that they have one of your, copies of your paper. And so you're going to want to stay on top of them. This is something that I wish I would have done more thoroughly with my master's degree, because I had a publication that I was trying to get submitted regarding my master's degree, and it never did because I just waited to the last minute to ask people for it, and then they forgot. And so it was just a constant, battle that I was facing. So just learn from my mistakes. Make sure you stay on top of it. If you're able to have like a weekly meeting with your advisor, that's a good way of just reminding them, hey, help me with this to get it in by this time. And, be flexible with them. My advisor, he's the chair of the department. So he has to read almost everything. He has to read all the theses, all the dissertations. And so I'm understanding of that. So I give him time, for that. And I'll just remind him when I realize that he's done reading those things, like, okay, let's, I have this paper, if you can get this done and whatnot. But stay on top of it and be mindful of their time too. So you do want to try to get it to them in a timely fashion, so that way you're not like rushing trying to get stuff done, so that way you can publish it by a certain time. Okay. So in regards to, each and every step, these would be the main things that I would encourage you, the advice that I would give you to help you with each process. If you have any questions about anything concerning the PhD program, if there's certain aspects along the program that you are concerned about or wondering about, please leave a comment down below. If you have received your PhD or you're currently working on your PhD and you've come across things that you found that was challenging, that you think that will be helpful for other people to be aware of, so that way they can plan, leave that below as well. And be sure to give a thumbs up as always, because that helps this message get across, so other people who are thinking about getting a PhD, they can see this video. And make sure you subscribe as well. Thanks for tuning in and watching to the end. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.